Hey guys, welcome back to another video at Jensen's Reptiles. So today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. I'm currently sitting half inside Zeke's enclosure while I talk to you because he wants to come out, and in the moment I'm just going to have to give him loads of attention. So first things first, I wanted to talk today about some of the common myths and misconceptions in the reptile keeping community and dispel a few of them if I can. So number one, keeping reptiles is easy. I know a lot of people say like, oh, you don't have time for a cat or a dog, maybe get a reptile. That's something I half agree with. So if you have a different kind of lifestyle, maybe a reptile is really good for you. But they're far from easy. I think that making sure that you have everything right takes a lot of research, takes a lot of effort, and keeping your animal healthy for the duration of its lifetime can be a lot of work, especially because a lot of these animals live for a very long time. So it's something that you hear thrown around in the community quite a lot, because I think as reptile keepers we spend a lot of time researching these animals, and it gets to a point where we do find it really easy to look after them. It's because we do it every day. Same as if someone had a dog or a cat or a hamster or a mouse or whatever. After time and you get used to doing something, it becomes easy, same as anything else. Initially, keeping a reptile takes a lot of knowledge. I know that from personal experience with my first reptile. I got it wrong more times than I got it right. Luckily, I managed to fix those mistakes early on, but it still takes a hell of a lot of research to get it right the first time round. And I think doing that's really important for the health of the animal, and I'd always promote researching as much as possible before you get the animal rather than after. So yeah, as reptile keepers, our animals do become easier to look after, but because we know what we're doing at some point. In general, I think they require a lot of work to get started. So that's myth number one. It's a pretty simple one, and it's something that you probably hear quite a lot, but it's definitely something that annoys me a little bit when people say it. I would love for more people to learn about reptiles. I think they're amazing, and I would love if more people kept them because I think they're brilliant pets, but they're far from easy when you're getting started. So, point number two. Excuse Yoshi's appearance today. He is shedding and he's a bit of a grumpy guts. So, anyway, moving on. Point number two. Loose substrate will cause impaction. Incorrect. Improper husbandry and a poor substrate choice will cause impaction. So it's said time and time again that a loose substrate, your animal will eat it, it'll become impacted in their stomach and they'll die. It's something that actually that's not 100% true. If your heating is right, your lighting is right, and your animal is healthy, there is no reason why a natural substrate shouldn't pass through their digestive system. In some cases, the choice of substrate can be a little bit iffy. Anything that would encourage the animal to eat it, such as calci sand, is a no-no. You don't want them to be eating their substrate. In natural situations, these animals will not eat the ground that they live on, they will eat the food that they're offered. So if Yoshi accidentally grabs a mouthful of this when he's chasing down a locust, I'm not going to be concerned. He passes this without any issue whatsoever. If for any reason he became sick, I would seriously consider changing my substrate, because then it wouldn't be in an ideal situation. So there's so many factors that go along with your substrate choice that can affect the health of your animal. Likewise with this, sands and substrates that let moisture spread quite easily are a harbour ground for bacteria. Unless you change out that whole area each time something happens, it's really hard to tell in a warm enclosure because it dries so quickly. The great thing about the substrates that I use is that they clump very quickly, the moisture doesn't spread, and that puts me with a bit more peace of mind in terms of bacteria spreading. Also, when I clean, I take not only the soiled area but everything around it and then replace. So yeah, it's a little bit more work, but as far as enrichment goes, nothing can beat a natural substrate. These animals like to dig, they like to burrow. Giving them the opportunity to do that, in my view, is better than keeping them on a substrate where they can't do that. But again, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm telling you a couple things that are myths, not personal choices. So if you choose to keep your animal on a flat substrate, like I have done in the past, I've kept Yoshi on just lino or just tiling in the past. I find that this substrate works best for me, works best for him, so that's what I choose to use. The issues regarding impaction are the myth themselves. You know, I'm not here to criticize anyone's substrate choice. You do what's best for you, you do what's best for your animal, that's perfect. But if you have the correct lighting and heating, your substrate choice shouldn't be an issue. So that is myth number 2. It annoys me a hell of a lot when people jump on that one, purely because the amount of research that's gone into it, not only on my part, but a lot of people in the community in general, and a lot of people that I spend a serious amount of time working with. This is a proven fact. The substrate itself is not the issue, the husbandry is. So if you have any questions about that, please just ask. I'm always more than happy to talk about it. Any comments below, go for it. I usually reply to those as soon as I can. So the next common myth is that leopard geckos don't need UVB. This is a big one, and it's actually been down to quite a few recent studies that have changed this way of thinking. Leopard geckos respond incredibly well to UVB lighting. It's something that I found myself, just with studying the animal in general for a fairly long amount of time, that UVB is hugely beneficial for them. Reason being, a lot of us obviously supplement the food that we give our animals with multivitamins, calcium, and vitamin D3. In a natural setting, they will get the D3 that they need from the sun. So it only seems natural to replicate that in a captive environment, so that we're not worrying about the dosage of D3 that we're giving them in an unnatural form, because even the people that are manufacturing the vitamins can't tell us exactly how much to feed the animals, because we just don't know at the moment, and it's incredibly hard to know how much they're going to be taking in. If you dust your insects, how much it's going to rub off. You can see on the sandstone there, a lot of that powder is what I put on the insects. I'd prefer for Luna to eat it, but in a lot of cases she doesn't. So having a UVB light is a fail-safe to keep your animal healthy. There are exceptions to how much light you provide. Some animals, those that are albino, have very sensitive eyes, and UVB will not blind your leopard gecko if it's used properly. These animals function very, very well in the wild. In albino cases, they're not going to expose themselves to the sun as much as a normal leopard gecko would. Leopard geckos typically bask in the early morning and the late afternoon. That's a very, very normal behaviour for them, and then they'll go and sleep for a bit and they might come out a bit later on. So replicating that in captivity is something that I find to be very important. These animals thrive with UVB. As soon as I installed a UVB light for Luna, suddenly she was far more active. She was a lot happier in herself. She would bask in the morning and in the evening, which are these natural behaviours that I really, really want her to display. I think it's when your animal is behaving in a natural way, they're healthier. So I think that's hugely important. At the same time, providing a dark place for the animals to get away from the light when they choose to is also very important. You see Luna is in her cave at the moment. She'll often have her head hanging out or even her tail hanging out. The tail in particular can absorb a hell of a lot of what's useful from the light, which is really important to know about these animals. They have these little bumps on their skin which will take in the UVB far, far quicker than a lot of other animals. So whilst these aren't typically basking animals in the heat of the day, they're far more effective at taking in what they need in low light settings, which is why any UVB you use needs to be at low percentage. I use the Arcadian natural light, which is just replicating a low level natural sunlight. So you can see now she's fed up, so she's gone back in her cave, which is just fine. Again, if you've got any questions about lighting for leopard geckos, let me know. Also, if it's something you choose not to use, that's your personal choice, that's absolutely fine. I just want to make sure nobody thinks I'm criticising them here. These are just, dispelling the myths, not kind of commenting on husbandry itself. If you supplement your geckos and they're nice and healthy, that's wonderful. If you're worried about supplementation, get yourself a nice UVB light, diffuse it if you need to, depending on what gecko you have, and most likely you're going to have a nice, healthy, happy gecko. Okay, and on to myth number 4. Royal pythons don't like large enclosures. Now, this for me is a little bit of a touchy subject. Anyone that knows me well knows that full well. That's something I don't believe in any way whatsoever. Again, not a criticism on anyone's choice. Do what works best for you and your animal. But when people say that royal pythons don't need large enclosures or don't like large enclosures, that's something I don't agree with. I do agree with people adapting the way they keep their animal to make sure they're healthy. That's absolutely fine. Of course, do whatever you need to do. But the excuse of, I want to keep 50 snakes just for the fun of it, I'm going to use the they don't like large enclosures reason, and I can keep them all in really small plastic boxes. That's all well and good, but actually your animal may not thrive. And what I've found is that those snakes that are kept in those smaller enclosures don't develop the muscle mass that they would need to stay healthy. They get fat quite quickly, and potentially don't have the longest of lives, which is really sad, because I know the people that keep these animals love them, and they want them to thrive. But unfortunately, when an animal is gathering fats in its liver rather than putting on muscle mass, we have a problem. So the one way to think about this is, royal pythons really love small, dark, tight spots. They really do. So put them inside their enclosure, because these animals, without fail, every single night are out and about. They climb, they explore. If I had the doors open to this enclosure, they'd be out with me, without a second thought. And I make sure my animals all come out each night, so they have time to stretch. They have a bit of enrichment. I get to spend some time with them, because at the end of the day, they are my pets, and I want to enjoy them as much as I want them to enjoy their lives. So this for me is the minimum size of what I would keep a royal python in. This is 4 feet by 2 feet deep by 2 feet high. This is a Viv Exotic Viva Plus Maxi, I think. And this is the absolute bare minimum of what I would keep my royals in. Currently they're doing really well in these. At some point in the future, if I have more space, they'll get bigger enclosures. But I will keep the hiding spots small. So you can see, this is Haku's enclosure. She's currently under this log at the back, that small piece of wood at the back there. She's just over in the middle part. I'm not going to disturb her because she's sleeping at the moment and I want her to feed tonight, so I'm going to leave her be. But she has a hide here, this piece of cork running across the middle. The substrate is deep enough that she can burrow under any of this and I wouldn't be able to see her straight away. And she also has a hide over there, which is just a cork flat that's propped up slightly, so when she goes under it's nice and tight, and she feels secure. Pythons like to feel like every part of their body is touching something when they're hiding, and then they feel the best. So provide them with tight spaces, but if you can give them a larger enclosure, if you can give them space to climb. Haku is up on this branch every evening without fail. Likewise with Aki and Pixel, they're constantly on the go as soon as the lights are out. So they have brilliant muscle tone, they're very healthy, and that's how I want my snakes to be. And I know they're that way because of the activity that they can do at night. When I got Haku, she'd been living in essentially a lunchbox, and she had no muscle tone whatsoever. And for a snake like her, she carries the spider gene, which means she has a neurological issue which makes her head wobble. Her neck was very weak when I got her, which was a huge concern. Some of these animals can't eat properly. Now that she's had lots of exercise and she can move as much as she likes, she has a really strong neck, and she only really wobbles her head when she's eating, or when she's about to eat even. She is incredibly healthy, and it makes me really happy to know that she is that way, and the change in her life happened because she has a little bit more freedom to move. So if you're thinking about getting a royal python, then do it. They're wonderful, they're amazing animals. They deserve a bit more space. They may not be the most active, fast moving snake in the world, they're really not. They're fairly placid and slow, which is, in my eyes, what makes them brilliant. But giving that little bit extra freedom to move inside their own enclosure, I think just helps with the longevity of these animals. They live for a very long time, and the healthier they can be at the start of their lives, hopefully the longer they'll live. So, on to my fifth and final point, and then I'll stop ranting for the day and go back to enjoying spending some time with my animals. So this point it's a bit of a funny one, and I know this divides the community right down the middle. So wherever you stand on this, obviously, it's actually more of an opinion than anything else. It's not really a myth, it's not a misconception, it's a personal point of view. I'm trying to film Aki's tail, but I think she's gone off. So snakes don't have emotion. It's something you hear all the time. They tolerate being held. They put up with human interaction. I don't know if it's true or not, because I'm not a snake. But the time I spend with my animals is so precious to me, and the interaction that I have with them is so important to me that I find it hard to believe that there's nothing else going on in their heads. I know exactly what they're capable of in terms of, their brain structure and everything like that, and they may not display emotion in the same way that we do, and no, of course they don't, they're not human, but they do display emotion, and it's very important to know how to read it. Snakes, their main display of emotion, sadly, is fear, which is a shame, and often not in captive settings, but frequently in the wild. When a snake interacts with a person, most likely they're scared because they haven't been exposed to people before, which is normal. I mean, I would be scared if something huge came along and tried to mess with me. I think that's pretty normal. But I've seen the displays of affection that my animals have shown over the years, and it's something that I find really interesting. The reason I'm filming in Aki's enclosure at the moment is because when Aki was sick a few months ago, she had a respiratory infection which had been ongoing for the entire time I've had her, and it's something that when I got her, she had it, I took her to the vet, it was kind of coming on and off, and I just thought, right, it's time to get her some antibiotics and get her treated so she doesn't have to deal with this anymore. So while we were at the vet, she was a little bit nervous, and there were 4 people standing around that table, and she could have gone to any of them to hide, but she came to me with such force and intent that it does lead me to believe that not only can they recognize the people that they know, also that these animals will look to us for comfort, and whether that be in the same way that we perceive love and affection, or just in their own way. And personally, I think it's in their own way, because they're not, primates for a start. They're not people, they're not mammals, but they do display emotion quite clearly. And the more time you spend with your animal, the more time you handle them, love them, and show them that affection, you'll see it in return. And Aki here's a bit of a grump right now because I just woke her up because I wanted to show her to you while I was telling you that lovely story. But these animals aren't just an instinctual response to everything. They will seek us out when they know that we get them out, for enrichment. They will look to us for feeding, and a lot of the pets that I have here would fail hopelessly in the wild because they look to people as these wonderful warm climbing frames that they can have lots of fun with. I don't see that as tolerating. I see that as a form of enjoyment. Not the same kind of thrills that we'll get out of life, I'm sure, but in their own way, they more than tolerate us. And I think that that's something really important to remember with your own animals, that they have formed a bond with you if you've formed a bond with them. Right, so I'm done being soppy for the day, and I'm going to go enjoy these lovely creatures and feed them a bit later on. I hope you've enjoyed the video. It's a bit of a weird one, and I hope it's not come across too angry and ranty, because that wasn't the intention. It was just to share my thoughts on this stuff, which I don't usually do. So if it's the kind of video that you want to see more of, let me know. If you think I've been angry and ranty, feel free to let me know as well, and I'll make sure we don't do many more of these. Again, as usual, if you've got any things that you want to see or any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, I hope you're having an awesome day, and I will catch up with you soon. Cheers, guys.